I'm Kathryn from the Sewing Studio Fabric Superstore and the Sewing Studio at Lady Lake. Welcome aboard to this tutorial on how to use your awesome new BabyLock Jubilant. I can't wait to show you everything you need to know about this machine and to help get you started. Okay, let's go. Okay, before I get into the meat of the instruction of this machine, I just want to overview some of the awesome features of this machine and why a person might want it. So first of all, there are 80 built-in stitches, including 8 one-step buttonholes, which are super awesome and super easy. There's an automatic needle threader, which makes life vastly easier and simple for you. Everybody needs one of those. There's an LCD screen on this machine, which gives you access to editing features as well as the knowledge of what foot to use for what stitch you've chosen. It makes life super simple. You've got a quick set drop-in bobbin, which makes it easy to get the bobbin in place and get yourself situated to start sewing. You also have a free arm for free arm sewing for when you're doing round objects. And this is a real slim free arm too, which is really perfect for doing all kinds of little round objects. You also have the ability here on the back of the machine to drop your feed dogs so that you have access to free motion quilting and some other specialty techniques. Okay, so that's just our quick overview. Let's get into the meat of the instruction. The BabyLock Jubilant comes with a plethora of accessories that's going to make it ready to go for you so that you can get started with almost any project. So let's just go over some of the included accessories within the box. So first of all, you have a dust cover, which is awesome. Helps keep the dust off your machine, keeps your machine nice and clean and ready for sewing. You've got your J foot, which is your standard presser foot, your N foot, which is a monogramming foot or decorative stitch foot. It lets you do some of your pretty stitches. Your G foot for overcasting or wrapping around the edges of your fabric when you've got a frayable fabric, your R foot for blind hemming, your I foot for zippers, your A foot for stitching that 8 one-step buttonholes, your M foot, which is a button fitting foot. You've got 4 included bobbins. One will be in your machine. You have a disc-shaped screwdriver, which is going to allow you to change the needle more easily. You can have access with that one. You can use the side of it for removing your needle plate when you need to clean your machine. It's awesome. You have several different screwdrivers, that one, and then there's also this one in case you need access to your needle through that one. You have a little cleaning brush and also a stylus. So that's available to you. You have an awl, which lets you poke holes in the end of your, at the end of the awl. There's also where you can pull through drawstring with your awl setter right there. You have a seam ripper, which every single person in the entire world that sews needs. You have a thread net, which allows you to deal with fussy threads or specialty threads that need a little bit more management. You have 2 sets of needles. One is just a general accessory pack, which has several different types of needles in it. You also have a twin needle set, which is perfect for adding your own little shortening hems on t-shirts and things like that. This is the auxiliary spool pin, which allows you to put your second spool of thread on when you are using your twin needle. And of course, you have 3 different sizes of spool cap. Your small, medium, and large spool cap, which allows you to place the proper spool cap on the right size of spool that you're using to sew. You also have a little accessory pouch, which holds most of these accessories. You have a little stitch display, which you can put on top of your machine. You also have your foot pedal and a power cord. Okay, so in order to install your power cord to get started, your power cord is going to insert right here at the side of the machine. You'll notice that your power cord has a flat side and a rounded side, so you install it into the port just there. Once you've installed your power cord, you're going to go ahead and turn your machine on. And by doing that, you're going to toggle your switch so that the line is pushed against the machine. To turn your machine off, you're going to toggle the switch so that the circle is pushed against your machine. In order to install your foot pedal, you're going to take the end of your foot pedal cord and insert it right here into that little port on your machine. Make sure you press it fully into the machine. One of the really cool features of this BabyLock Jubilant is that you've got a little stash palace, a little accessory bin for all of your sewing feet so that they have easy access for you to get to. So right at the front of your little accessory bin here, there's a little notch, and you're just going to simply lift that open. And inside here, you can store all of your feet, your tools, your screwdrivers, etc. When you want to close it, just bring it closed. When you want to remove this because you need access to your free arm for sewing, you're simply going to take a hold of it. There's the little port down here, so you'll grab a hold of that port and pull it out. When you want to reinstall it, you're just going to keep it flush with the machine right here and simply slide it back into position. Right here on the back of the machine, there's a little switch which allows you to engage and disengage your feed dogs. So when you're sewing, your feed dogs are coming up and down and managing your fabric. And the little toggle switch for your feed dogs is on this side towards the end of your machine. When you want to drop your feed dogs so that you can do free motion quilting, you're going to need to push your switch over to this side of the machine. And that's going to drop the feed dogs as soon as it makes one rotation down. And then they're going to stay down so that you can just freely move your fabric on your own. When you want to re-engage your feed dogs so that you can sew again, you're going to toggle your switch this direction. However, that doesn't automatically re-engage the feed dogs. You still need to make one rotation to bring your feed dogs up. So when you do that, you're going to either rotate your hand wheel, or you can take your needle drop button and touch it once and it'll bring up those feed dogs for you. It'll re-engage them so that they're grabbing and manipulating the fabric again. In order to install and remove your needle, you can either take your disc-shaped screwdriver and insert it here at the end of where the needle bar is. You're going to turn towards yourself to loosen the screw and away from yourself to tighten the screw. This is where the needle goes in and inserts into the machine. You're going to insert it into the machine with the flat side of the needle facing the back of the machine. And up here, you can see there's a little dot right above number 6. That little dot is the stopping point for the needle. And you can see right below it, that's actually the needle all the way inserted into the machine like it should be and touching that dot. You want to make sure you see that there's no space between the needle and that dot, that it's touching it. In order to install the presser feet, there's a bar at the front of the presser feet and it needs to insert into this little cup right here. So basically, I like to take a hold of my presser foot and slide it so that that bar is matching, and I'm going to bring my presser foot down so that it locks into place and grabs a hold of that presser foot. Sometimes I even give it a little toggle just to make sure that it's locked into place. When you want to change your presser feet, you're going to take a hold of this little lever at the back side of your presser foot holder, or your ankle as some people call it. There's this little black lever, so you're going to squeeze it towards the front of the machine, and when you do that, your presser foot drops off. To raise and lower your presser foot, there's a lever on the inside bed of your machine right here. Right now it's in the up position. If I push it up, it can actually raise even further if I have heavy denim that I'm trying to slide under my presser foot. Or if I want to put it down, I simply place it down. Don't just flick it down because it slams down on the bed of your machine. Lift it with your fingers. Put it down with your fingers. Okay, so in order to install your thread, they recommend that you put your thread with the thread coming off the bottom of your spool. However, if you've got an old school spool where you've got a slit cut into the top edge of your spool of thread, you need to make sure that slit is off to the right so that as the thread passes over it, it's not going to get caught on that. But honestly, you should get a nice new spool of thread and have your thread coming off the bottom of the spool. You're going to insert this spool in the center pin right there. And then once you've got that, you're going to match your spool cap to the size spool that you're using. Okay, so in order to wind the bobbin, we're going to take the thread and we're going to pass it numerically following the dotted lines. So I'm going to start here with 1, this little latch right here, and it clicks under there kind of like flossing your teeth. And as I do this, I like to hold on to my thread with my right hand just so that I can manage it more easily. So I'm going to start by clicking it into place there at number 1. Now at the back of the machine, you've got this little lever right here. So again, I hold my thread with my right hand and I'm going to pass the thread underneath that little lever right there. Now, as we approach this section, if you look at it, you've got this little arm poking up and you have a disc. So that's where we're going to go from behind that arm, and we're going to catch between the arm at the disc and then swing around under the disc from the front of it. Let me do that one more time so that you can see it. So again, I'm passing from behind that little arm, between the arm and the disc, and then swing around the front of the disc. So your thread is kind of caught from like 11 o'clock around to 4 o'clock if this was going to be a clock right here. And you want to make sure that you give a nice little tug so that that is snug underneath your little tension disc. At that point, you're going to head over here towards your bobbin. You're going to wrap your thread from the back to the front around your bobbin about 6 or 7 times. Once you have that wrapped around your bobbin, there's actually a little bit of a cutout right here, and there's a razor in there which is going to cut your thread. So you're going to take your thread, and I like to roll it off of my finger, and you're going to pull your thread towards the right. It pulls it in and cuts the excess thread for you. Once you've done that, if you can see, again, this is the last part of the picture, we're going to go ahead and push that bobbin towards the right. It snugs up against this little pin right here. Once you've done that, you can either press on your foot pedal, if you've got that plugged in, or you can use your start-stop button. When you're satisfied with your thread, you can just touch the stop button or take your foot off the foot pedal. At that point, you need to disengage your bobbin, so you'll push it back over towards the left, lift up your bobbin, and I like to use the cutter that's here because it is here. It's right there available to me right next to where my bobbin is. And now we're ready to install the bobbin on the machine. In order to install your bobbin, you're going to start right here with this little rectangular lever. There's a little arrow that points off to the right. So we're going to pull this lever to the right and your bobbin cover pops up. Simply set that aside for a moment and we're going to install our bobbin in here. So how do we install the bobbin? Well, first of all, the thread needs to be coming off of the bobbin in a counterclockwise fashion. So it's kind of like a P for perfect if you look at it. Once you've got that ready to go and you've got it the right direction, you simply drop your bobbin in. If you want to check, you can pull your thread to the right and just make sure that your bobbin is spinning counterclockwise. Now we're going to swing our thread around this direction. However, I just want to take a moment to point this out. If this is 12 o'clock on the back of the machine and 6 o'clock is towards the front of the machine, 7 o'clock is where the tension disc is for the bobbin thread. So I like to hold my finger on that bobbin and don't let it move. And then with some nice taut tension, I'm going to swing that bobbin thread 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, up and around. Once I get there, I'm going to continue to follow that exact same path. I'm going to come up and around this little mountain right here, and at the end of that, there's a little razor. I'm going to pull my thread to the right, and it cuts that excess bobbin thread. Then you need to reinstall your bobbin cover. So the bobbin cover has a little nub at the end of it, which is going to insert straight into that metal spot right there, and then push it down and it clicks back into place. Let's just take a moment to talk about some of the markings that are here in the needle plate area and on your bobbin cover. If you look across the back of the machine on the back of the needle plate area, these notations, these numerical indications are in inches. This is where we have our seam allowance markings. So this is with left needle position, because these markings back here are often for garments. So if you want a perfect 5/8 seam allowance, you're going to take your fabric and line it up with that 5/8 of an inch line right there. Now, the front markings down here are for center needle position. So if I've got my needle in the center position as indicated by that dot right there at the opening of that oval, if I want a 1/4 inch, I'm going to line my fabric up just beyond that dot, lined up with that line right there, and from center needle position, that's going to get me my perfect 1/4 inch for doing my seams on my quilt. Over here to the right, if you want to do 1-inch channel quilting, you're simply going to slide your fabric over to that mark right there, and now from a center needle position, you'll have a 1-inch seam. Okay, to install the thread onto the machine so that we can thread the needle, we're going to start by following our solid lines here and in numerical order. So 1 is where we're going to start by clicking into place right here at this little groove right here. Then we're going to come back to the back where the lever is, and we're going to pass straight down this channel. Now, before I go too far, let me just talk about this section right here. There's actually tension discs there. So you need to make sure your presser foot is up and open to receive the thread. Okay, so we're going to continue to pass straight down this channel. We're going to U-turn at the number 3, and we're going to head up towards our little uptake lever. Now, I want to indicate this real quickly to you. As we come up with this thread, we need to come up on the right side of this channel. And you're going to take your needle down and needle up so that you can make sure your uptake lever is in the highest position to receive the thread. So we're going to take our thread on the right side of this channel and swing it around towards the left side. From there, we're going to come straight back down this channel towards number 5. Number 5 comes straight down here at this part of the machine. Right here is number 6 for our threading. This is the needle bar, and on top of that needle bar, there's a little tiny piece of metal that sits on top of it so that it helps clip the thread in and keep it secure over that needle bar area. So when you're threading this section, you need to have a little bit of tension on your thread so that you can pass the thread in between the needle bar and that little piece of metal, and that's number 6. Now from there, we're going to come up towards number 7, but it passes through these little things right here, which I kind of call the chompers. So we're going to come up through there, up over number 7. It clicks into place at number 7, and then on the side of the machine, you have a razor. That razor is now going to cut your thread right there, any excess thread at number 8. Once you've done that, I like to put my foot down just to give my needle threader a little bit of clearance, and then right here, this little lever on the side of the machine, you're going to push it down, and what that does is creates a loop at the back of your needle of your thread. So it threads that needle for you, and now at that point, you simply have to pull that thread clear through the back of the needle. Let's take a moment to just have a brief overview about what we see on the front of our machine. Okay, starting from the left to the right, first of all, we have our start-stop button. Our start-stop button is what we use when we do not have our foot pedal plugged in. You can use it to start and then stop. If you have your foot pedal, of course, you'll be using that to start and stop. The next thing we have is our reverse button. If you hold this button down, the machine continues to go in reverse until you let it go. If you want to just do one extra stitch backwards, you're going to tap it and the machine will do that for you. Here we have our reinforcement key. So with reversing, it's actually going forward 3 stitches, backwards 3 stitches, and then when you let go, it goes forward. The reinforcement key, however, lets the machine take stitches 3 in one spot before it continues. So quilters prefer the reinforcement key. Next, we have our needle up, needle down key. With the needle up, needle down key, wherever the needle is, you can touch this button and put it where it isn't. The other thing is that the screen indicates that out of the box, this machine comes with the needle set to stop in the down position. If I choose to stop with the needle in the up position, which I don't do very often, but if I wanted to, you're going to take a hold of that needle up, needle down button and hold it for 3 seconds. Let's do that. So the machine's going to beep at me, and then on the screen, it's going to change to show me that the needle is now going to stop in the up position, which again, I don't do very often. So if I want to go back to stopping with the needle in the down position so that I can pivot as I turn my corners and things like that, I'm going to hold that button down. It beeps at me, and now I can see on my screen, my needle is back to being customized right where I want it. Here we have our speed. If you have your foot pedal plugged in, this speed control will actually govern how fast the machine is actually stitching. So personally, I like to just sew at a nice medium pace. So I keep this little toggle switch set on medium. No matter how hard I slam on my gas, it's not going to shoot away from me because it's going to hit that medium speed wall and stop. If I want to use my foot pedal with this, if I don't want to use my foot pedal at all, which believe it or not, I actually kind of enjoy sometimes, then this speed control is going to take control of how fast the machine is actually stitching. So if I'm coming to the end of a corner right before I turn, if I want to slow down so that I can be very precise with where my needle is going to end, I can slow this way down to the slowest position and just take one stitch at a time until I get to where I want, and then I can quick hit my stop button, my start-stop button. So that's our speed control right there. Again, most of the time I leave it on medium. While I'm here, let me just take 1 second to talk about the tension disc, which is up here. The tension should really be about at 4. There's a little dial here which I can spin down to 1 or up to 9. For specialty stitches and specialty things that you're doing, you might want to move off of that. But for almost all the sewing that you're going to do, your general purpose sewing, you're going to be at a tension of 4. It's not like it used to be where you have to wiggle this back and forth all the time. For the most part, you're going to leave it right at 4. The BabyLock Jubilant makes it extraordinarily easy to select your stitches. So when you're selecting a stitch on this machine, you have a dial here, which is going to spin one direction or the other. You can go any direction you want in order to choose the stitch that you want. So if I wanted to do a straight stitch with a left needle position, that's indicated right here at 0, 1. On that, I've got a reverse, so I can spin my dial down to where I get to number 1. And that's going to be straight stitch left needle with a reverse. Now, if I wanted to do a straight stitch center needle with a reinforcement, like if I'm piecing my quilt, I'm going to simply turn my dial until I get to number 4. And there I am on that. Now, another cool thing about doing that is that when I've selected stitch number 4, which is clearly indicated on the LCD monitor here, there actually is an indication of what foot the machine thinks that I should be using for that particular stitch. So if I have fabrics that fray and I want to do this stitch right here, which is an overcasting stitch for stretch fabrics, this is number 12. So I'm going to spin my dial until I get to 12. And right there, you can see that it indicates a change. I need to put my G foot on. What if I'm doing a buttonhole, which is number 44? I can spin until I get to number 44. I need my A foot on for doing buttonholes. So as I've selected my stitch, the foot the machine thinks I should be using is going to be indicated right there. Let's take a second to look at the right half of the machine now. So right here, as I indicated earlier, this is showing me that the needle is going to stop in the down position when I take my foot off the gas or when I hit my stop button. To the right of that, I've got an oval for length and an oval for width. The oval is going to indicate that these are the default settings for this particular stitch, stitch number 1 that I've chosen. So if I want to make a change to my length, I can increase my stitch length, like let's say I wanted to baste something. I can increase my stitch length simply by toggling the plus or to the right. That takes me up to a 5.0 for stitch length. And you'll notice there is no oval there any longer because I'm in control. If I want the machine to go back to its defaults, I just need to find that oval. So we have a dot, a dash, and a long jump. So that's our length up on top. And here we have a W on its side. That's our width. And again, I can increase the width or decrease the width. And actually, the cool thing is, when I'm on stitch number 1, which is a straight stitch, when I change my width, I'm actually moving my needle positions. From stitch number 1, if I just need to move my needle a little bit to the right, I can touch that plus button, and the needle actually has 14 positions that I can change to move that needle further to the right. Like say I need to hit the edge of my stripe versus my solid fabric. So there's that all the way to the right, and I can go back by touching my minus side of that toggle switch all the way back to my default of the far left needle position in stitch number 1. Okay, let's talk about these two buttons right here. So first of all, this button will put your machine into twin needle mode. Right now, we can see that we have one needle, which is stopping in the down position when I come to the end of my seam. If I want to use a twin needle, say to hem my t-shirt, I'm going to select that button, and there I have my twin needle mode. Now, when you're in twin needle mode, your machine will not allow you to choose stitches that will get you into trouble. So that's your twin needle mode. You can do decorative things or like I said, the hem of a t-shirt or something like that. Now, if you touch it again, it takes you back to single needle mode. Now this button down here on the far right, this is the automatic reverse. So here I am in my straight stitch. If I want to automatically reverse, I'm going to select that button, just tap it once, and my automatic reverse or reinforcement key comes on. So if I've chosen a straight stitcher with a reverse, the machine's going to go forward 3 stitches, backward 3 stitches, forward 3 stitches. If I've chosen a straight stitch with a reinforce, like a quilting stitch, it's going to lock in place those 3 stitches for me. So this is an awesome automatic reverse function. Let's start by sewing a straight line. So I'm going to start by selecting my start button. I'm going to let the machine go forward 3 stitches, and I'm going to touch stop. So again, it stops with the needle in the down position. If I need to reverse because I need to lock in my stitches or my seam, I'm going to hold down this reverse button so that the machine does 3 or 4 stitches backwards. Then I'm going to start sewing again. I'm going to speed it up just a little bit for myself. When I get to the end of what I'm doing, I'm going to come over here and hold down my reverse button for 3 or 4 stitches. I'm going to touch start and stop, bring my needle up out of the fabric. You need to lift your presser foot, and there's actually a razor on the side of the machine, so you can just go ahead and cut your thread. So here's what our stitches look like. Now let's do that again and let the machine work for us. So this time I'm going to select the automatic reverse function for me. I'm going to touch that button. Right there on the screen comes my little automatic reverse indicator, and I'm going to go ahead and touch start again and watch what happens. There, it automatically did the reversing for me. Now when I get to the end of my seam, I can touch my stop button, tap my auto reverse, and now the machine has done its automatic stitches and stopped with the needle in the down position. So I'm going to raise my needle, lift my presser foot, and again, there's a razor on the side of the machine so I can cut my stitches. Let's see what they look like. Okay, so let's just take a second to talk about these two presser feet. Your J foot is your standard utility presser foot. You're going to be doing your straight stitching and zigzagging with your J foot. Your N foot is your decorative stitch foot or your monogramming foot. You'll notice that the J foot is longer. It's going to grab a hold of your fabric faster, so it gets control faster. However, your N foot is wider, so it has control over a larger surface area. The N foot, however, the magic of that foot actually happens on the back of the foot. So you can see there's a groove worn through the back of the foot, which allows your decorative stitches that have quite a buildup of thread to pass through underneath that little bridge without getting smushed. On the back of the J foot, there is no such bridge, so your stitches would get smushed there. So you want to make sure you're using the foot that's indicated on your screen when you're selecting which presser foot to use. I'm going to show you how to overcast the edge of your fabric, and we're going to use the G-foot to do that. So the stitch I like to use for overcasting is stitch number 12. It's an overcasting stitch for stretch fabric. However, I love to use it on woven because it's a very complete and polished and professional looking stitch. So I've chosen stitch number 12 here, which is indicated on the screen. And above the number 12, it tells me I need the G-foot. So right inside the foot, above the bar where you're going to clamp it on and attach it, is the letter of each foot. So this one is the G foot, and I'm going to use it right now to show you what to do. So when we're overcasting, our stitches are going to form around the edge of our fabric. So when you place your fabric underneath your presser foot on the G foot, you need to line your fabric up against the inside edge of this toe on the foot on the right-hand side. Right here, this little rectangular area, there's actually a drop-down piece of metal that goes down right against your needle plate, and your fabric butts directly up against that. So I've got everything ready to go. Let's see what that looks like as it's stitching. Make sure you keep your fabric butt right up against that inside edge of the toe. You don't want it to slip underneath, and you don't want it to go over to the left away from it. Now I'm going to talk about the blind hem foot, which is the R foot. So there are two blind hem stitches here on the machine. Number 21 is the blind hem stitch for woven fabric. Number 22 is the blind hem stitch for stretch fabric. I've chosen number 21. So right here on the screen is indicated number 21, and I'm supposed to have the R foot on. Again, the letter is indicated right in the center of the foot above the bar where you attach it. Before I put this on the machine, I just want to take a second to point out this little flange here. And by little, I mean gigantic. So this is going to be very important as we form our blind hem stitch. Okay, so I've got the R foot on the machine, and I have my fabric ready to go underneath the R foot. You should be looking at the wrong side of your fabric, and then you fold it up the right side on this end. We have videos on our website as to how to properly form a blind hem. The important thing right here is this, again, gigantic flange on the edge of the foot. That's going to act as a guide for the fold on your fabric to actually perform the proper blind hem. So you need to make sure that that fold is butt directly up against the left side of this gigantic flange. Okay, let's see how this stitch forms. So it stays along the right and jumps over and nips on the left. Stays along the right and jumps over and nips on the left. Okay, let's see what that looks like. I'm going to raise my needle, pull my fabric out of the back. Now from the right side, you've got these tiny little nips, and that's exactly what you're looking for to have the perfect blind hem. Okay, the I foot is your zipper foot. When you install that foot, you can install that presser foot either on the right side or on the left side. For our purposes right now, I'm going to start sewing on the left side of my zipper, which means my zipper is on the right side of the foot. So when I have the foot clamped in there, there's actually an area here where your teeth of your zipper are going to butt right up against that inside edge of your I foot, your zipper foot. And you'll notice that the needle needs to go into that slot, that hole, that cove that's created there on your zipper foot. So I'm going to need to move my needle into position. And when I do that, I can check that I am clear. So as long as I'm clear, I'm ready to go to install my zipper. You want to keep your teeth butted right up against that section of the foot. The BabyLock Jubilant has 8 built-in one-step buttonholes, and you're going to use this foot, the A foot, in order to make those buttonholes, and they're perfect and awesome and super easy. So let me talk about how we actually install the button on the foot, and then we'll talk about getting the foot on the machine, and then we'll show you how to do that actual buttonhole. To install the button on the buttonhole foot, we're going to start by opening it up to receive the button here at the end. So right in the center of the foot, you're going to put your thumb and just simply slide open the buttonhole foot. Place your button into the foot and then pinch it down to receive the button. It should stay in there pretty good for you. To install the buttonhole foot on the machine, you might need to lift your presser foot a little bit higher than normal in order to get it on there. So you're going to go ahead and lift it up and clamp it down on that little bar just like on all the other feet. But here's where the magic happens on that buttonhole foot. The distance of the button, the diameter, the size, is going to be measured here in between these arms. So this little buttonhole lever needs to come down and be pushed in between those arms so that it can measure that buttonhole. So that as it's sewing, it'll hit that back lever and it'll trigger it to go back forward and backward to complete that buttonhole for you. It is awesome. One of the other things that I like to do is put my thread down underneath the buttonhole foot when I start. So if you take your needle down and needle up, and then simply take your pair of scissors or a seam ripper and pull your thread clear on the other side, you're able to get that top thread down underneath that buttonhole foot so that it's ready to go for you and it won't be out in the way up on top. Once you've got that, if you've marked your buttonhole, you're going to take your fabric and place it underneath the presser foot with the right side, kind of like the fold, lined up against the right edge of the foot. So you're going to keep your fabric lined up again with the right side of this foot. Now, if you've marked your buttonhole, this line needs to be here in this portion of your foot. You've got green lines, which are indicating where this line needs to be at the start of stitching your buttonhole. So slide your fabric back until in the mouth of the foot, you can see your buttonhole line. Make sure you keep your fabric on that right side of the foot and put your foot down. So you'll see the center little notch here in red is indicating the center of where you would slit your buttonhole open, and the green and red lines are lined up along the line that you've indicated on your fabric for where your buttonhole is to be placed. Okay, let's stitch this out. When it's done, take your needle out of your fabric and simply remove your fabric and look at that perfect little buttonhole. When removing your buttonhole foot, start by replacing your buttonhole lever back up into the machine. So make sure it's pushed up all the way, not backwards, not sideways, just up, up, up into the machine. And then here at the back, again, you're going to squeeze that little lever towards you. You might need some extra height and remove your buttonhole foot. This machine comes with a button fitting foot, which actually sews the button on for you. It is the M foot. It also comes with a little shank to give your button some distance so it's not sewn so closely to your clothes. Right there in the center of the foot, I have my shank engaged, which is how I would sew a button on every time I go to sew a button on. Some people like to disengage it, so you simply slide that little lever back and it's disengaged. But again, for the most part, I don't want my button so close to my clothes that I can't even use it or get my clothes attached to myself. So right there, engage your shank. To sew the button on, I'm going to select stitch number 8, which is a zigzag with a reinforcement. With the reinforcement, it's got a little dot right there, which shows me that it's locking in place. This is the stitch number 8 here with the reinforcement, and the machine is telling me I should have on my J-foot, but I'm not putting on my J-foot because I'm going to sew the button on. In order to make this happen, I need to take that zigzag and put it to a length of 0, which means the needle is simply going to go into the left position, right position, left position, right position without traveling forward. That way it can go into the holes of my button. So I've installed the button onto this M-foot. Basically, it gets squeezed in between this little metal fork and the top of the presser foot. The little shank is right there down the center of the buttonhole, and I've got my holes in the corner curves aligned with these red markings on my presser foot. So I'm going to check my needle clearance by turning my hand wheel towards myself and making sure that that needle is going to slip into the hole on the button. It's clear on the right and clear on the left, so I can go ahead and select Start and let the machine do its stitches. Once it's stopped and I'm satisfied with the number of stitches, take the needle up out of the fabric, lift your presser foot, and pull your button towards you. I've chosen a decorative stitch, stitch number 68, because I want to show you one cool thing the reinforcement key does for you. I have my end foot on and I've chosen this stitch number 68, which is a scallop stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and start stitching. Now, if I don't want to just stop dead, like right in the middle of what I'm doing, if I wanted to complete the actual scallop motif, I can simply touch my reinforcement key, the green light comes on, and it will stop as soon as it finishes that particular motif that I was on. So if I lift the needle and show you here, you can see that that last one came out as a complete scallop motif. Well, that wraps up our instruction on this BabyLock Jubilant. I hope you learned a lot. Now, if you have not actually purchased this machine, we have it for sale. We have it for sale in both of our locations, here at the Sewing Studio Fabric Superstore in Maitland, Florida, or at the Sewing Studio at Lady Lake in Lady Lake, Florida, just by the Villages, or we have it on our website at www.sewing.net. So I hope you enjoyed everything. I hope you learned a lot. Now you got to go make some pretty things, okay? So take off and sew.